Hey guys, great to be with you. Today we're going to talk about the hint that the FBI dropped just days before this mass outage that we had today in regards to our cell phones. It dramatically impacted my life here in Houston as an AT&T customer. I had to cancel appointments because of my non-working phone and just got it working again. So the live update from NBC is that 75% of AT&T's service is working again. Now this impacted AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Cricket, Clear Talk, I am told, but mainly just AT&T was the big one hit. Now, some people are saying that these were solar flares that impacted the service. I am not buying it, and I'm going to break down why. Let's look at what the FBI director said in a news update days before everything went down. Wall Street Journal reported on February 18th. FBI director says China cyber attacks on U.S. infrastructure now at unprecedented scale. Christopher Wray warns that pre-positioned malware could be triggering to disrupt critical systems in the U.S. Reporting from Munich, as intelligence chiefs and policymakers gathered for this city's annual security conference, focused on the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigations urged them not to lose sight of another threat, China. Christopher Wray on Sunday said that Beijing's efforts to covertly plant offensive malware inside the U.S. critical infrastructure networks is now at a, quote, a scale greater than we'd seen before, he said, an issue he has deemed a defining national security threat, citing Volt Typhoon, the name given to the Chinese hacking revealed last year to be lying dormant inside the U.S. critical infrastructure. Wray said Beijing-backed actors were pre-positioning malware that could be triggered at any moment to disrupt U.S. critical infrastructure. Quote, it's the tip of the iceberg. It's one of many such efforts by the Chinese, he said, on the sidelines of the security conference that has been dominated by questions over Ukraine and the death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. China, he had earlier told delegates, is increasingly inserting effective weapons within our critical infrastructure, poised to attack whenever Beijing decides the time is right. What a time to be alive, because war doesn't look like it used to look. It's not always guns and bombs. It's cyber warfare sometimes. So is what happened today a part of China's cyber attack efforts? Now, given all the coverage of FBI's recent rampant corruption, we also have to factor in the question of, is our federal government testing something out on us as well? Is this enacted by the federal government? And the FBI is saying that it's China, because CIA documents that were once leaked by a whistleblower showed that the CIA can do such a cyber attack and then plant information that indicates footprints of China or Russia when it's actually a US government effort. So we have to factor in that question too. But the fact that the FBI was just warning about China's growing cyber attack abilities just days before, and then this happens, could be China. China is not our friend. Now, another headline that came out actually yesterday in regards to something similar. LA Times, wary of a hackers, Biden orders new cybersecurity measures at U.S. ports. President Biden signed an executive order Wednesday that creates new rules to shore up security at America's ports and commits $20 billion to replace Chinese-made cranes that U.S. officials worry could be vulnerable to hacking and remote control. The executive order empowers U.S. Coast Guard to respond to cybersecurity incidents at ports and lays out a new set of safety regulations that port operators must follow to fend off digital attackers. So just in recent days, our feds are saying, oh my gosh, China is a real cyber threat. Well, duh, we've known that. And now they're doing something about it. So it turns out apparently about 80% of the cranes at U.S. ports were actually made by China. So has China built them with something installed in it that, or China can remote control to stop the cranes at ports from working, and suddenly we can't bring goods into our country. So now America's like, maybe we shouldn't be relying on China so much. A special thank you to the sponsor of my coverage, National Gold Group. Gold soared past 2,100 an ounce in 2023. Donald Trump recently warned that the US dollar no longer being the world standard will be our greatest defeat in 200 years. Military conflicts in Israel, Ukraine, and Yemen, plus rate cuts on the table are fueling gold's meteoric rise. Several major banks are also forecasting sizable rate cuts in an election year. Some say this is Biden's Hail Mary attempt to keep the White House. Meanwhile, our national debt is skyrocketing higher. There's a direct correlation to the national debt and the price of gold. In 2020, the U.S. debt was $23 trillion. Gold was $1,500 an ounce. By 2023, $33 trillion debt, and gold soars over $2,000 an ounce. Why are so many Americans adding physical gold and silver to their portfolios and retirement plans? You can learn why. Call America's own precious metal company, the National Gold Group, today. Mention my channel, Ivory Hecker. You'll always get best-in-class service from America's conservative precious metals leader. National Gold Group has the IRA fee waiver program on all qualifying rollovers. Call 888-617-5927. Get a free investor guide today. National Gold Group is a Consumer Affairs top-rated gold IRA dealer. Call 888-617-5927. Remember, there's always a risk of loss, and past performance is not indicative of future results. Maybe we shouldn't be relying on China so much. Maybe we should manufacture our own cranes. And that's the thing. So much of American products are made by China. So could China be building them in a way to hurt us whenever they want to pull the trigger on hurting us? This is just reminds me of the Trump administration, when Trump was the first one really saying we need to stop China in its tracks, the way that they are taking over control of our country in such a subtle way. Trump, a huge part of his presidency was actually taking back our power from China. And the fact that that was barely covered by the news when Trump was working on that, and instead they've tried to paint him as a racist against the Chinese, is crazy. And Trump actually had a policy in place to stop Chinese spies that were infiltrating American universities. And as soon as Biden came in and was inaugurated, he reversed that. He got rid of the anti-Chinese spy program, which is why we have a lot of questions about Biden's loyalty to his own country. But I kind of digress here. Now, a lot of people have been saying that they feel that this was solar flares, and someone pointed me to this solar flare video because apparently big solar flares have been happening.
Good morning, folks. We are sun focused here today. Twin X-class solar flares erupted at the northern sunspots as the group gained magnetic complexity after central development. We'll hit 2 quick science articles as well, but we are starting with the last 24 hours on our star. You'll see 2 flashes at the northern group and 2 other eruptions as well. One from the bottom left at the limb, and the other a plasma filament towards the departing limb on the right. We're going to take a better look at all of them here. We're going to start with the X-ray flux chart, which shows the 2 big flaring events as the spikes into X-class range on the right. They both erupted from that northern sunspot group. There was also a longer duration M-class flare near the bottom solar crown. Luckily, the X-class events were relatively impulsive and they did not create coronal mass ejections.
So in recent days, there have been solar flares. That's just the latest video from this guy that came out today. Allegedly, is that video of the sun even real? I know the chart he showed was from NOAA.gov, but there's all kinds of video of the sun out there. My aunt showed me this sun tracking app that she was watching the sun close up every day. And I said, was that even real? Because at one point you see what looks like a little spaceship going into the sun. I said, is this really video of the actual sun? And further research showed, no, this was AI the whole time. So we've got to be careful about video of the sun. Are the solar flares even real? So, but here's the thing. I don't think it is solar flares. People in Canada told me that their at&t service is doing fine, first of all. I don't know if everyone's at&t there is fine, but if it's only impacting America, I mean, if it's solar flare, it's impacting cell phones or across a certain part of the world, you would think, right? Not just one country. Now, the whole 911 thing. Well, before I get to that, I talked to Michael Corey, who's an investigative journalist who's investigated the Ericsson 911 system. Ericsson is a compromised foreign company that runs our 911 systems. It's based in Sweden. I did a full podcast on Ericsson before. Michael Corey is looking into this right now. He said tier one data centers like pharmacies are also impacted today. And that is a key indication that a solar flare is not the cause of this whole situation, because tier one data centers are underground. Solar flares wouldn't impact that. He said this is tied to Ericsson. AT&T customers' ability to call 911 right now is not working, but 911 call centers are reportedly still working. Fox Business reported that if you need to get a hold of 911 and you have an AT&T phone like me, you can still text 911 to 911, text your little emergency, and it'll still go through. So I don't know how that works, the fact that you're only allowed to text and not do text 911, not text anyone else. Who has set up this infrastructure? It doesn't make sense to me that, like, oh, AT&T is just totally down, but it's given an exception with 911. It is still going to work. So what's really going on now? Some people at AT&T, reportedly people who actually work there, have been kept in the dark about what's happening. Two, NBC's latest report says it was not immediately clear what triggered the service disruption. So nobody knows. At last report, NBC did report that the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency was in touch with AT&T, but did not say that there was any indication of a cyber attack. NBC posted a quote from the Federal Cyber Agency saying, CISA is aware of the reports, and we are working closely with AT&T to understand the cause of the outage and its impacts and stand ready to offer any assistance needed, he said. Ericsson, I just wanted to show you guys this page on Ericson, who runs a lot of our phone infrastructure in the US, actually, not just 911, but they've been in trouble a lot with our federal government. This is justice.gov. It says Ericsson will plead guilty. This was just last year. Ericsson will plead guilty to engaging in a long-running scheme to violate the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act by paying bribes, falsifying books and records, and failing to implement reasonable internal accounting controls in multiple countries around the world. If Ericsson is partially in charge, that could also be something to look at. So we're just really not sure what is going on here. I think it was some sort of cyber infrastructure attack. It could be the Chinese. Could it be our government testing how to control us by shutting down our access? So, which brings me to my own story today. So I had my tax appointment that I had to get to this morning. Now I could see that I had no bars on my phone, but I didn't connect the dots that when I get on the road, that my GPS is not going to work. So I hit the road with my GPS plugged in. I'm driving, and all of a sudden, oh, my GPS is not working. So now that means I need to turn around, go home, create a map, figure out how I can really track these roads, because my tax office is not close. We have to go traverse the city on all these roads, and I need to get a detailed map going. I realized by the time I got that, I would be way too late for my appointment. So I had to email my accountant and say I can't make it today. And he said he was also having the same issues. So no worries. But I couldn't even call my accountant because of the phone situation. I couldn't text him because he didn't have iMessage. So I have an iPhone, and we can text through the internet if we're on Wi-Fi. So I could use my phone on Wi-Fi, but it was useless for calls and texts and GPS and internet once I was out on the road. So it created a major issue. And that's the thing. So many Americans are relying on GPS now. What sort of grinding halt will we come to if nobody's phones worked at all? Was this someone's test to see if they could take down certain infrastructure? if they wanted to shut everything down in the future. A lot of people conspiracy theorize about such things after going through what we went through in 2020. Okay, these theories are way more real to us than they used to be after what happened in 2020. So that's what we got right now. Let me know your thoughts on this whole ordeal. Did your phone go out? About 30 to 35% of my audience pulled on my Insta story said that they were impacted by this outage. And just before I started the show today, my bars came back. So that's great. Looks like they're doing repairs. Let me know how your life was impacted in the comments, and let me know your own conspiracy theories. And we'll see you guys next time.